Hey, what's going on, Who That Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And we have a special guest here on the State of the Saints podcast from 104.5 in Baton Rouge, ESPN, and the host of After Further Review, we have Matt Moscona. Matt, what's going on, man?
TJ, what's good, man? It's a weird Lundi Gras here, man. There's ice everywhere. Nobody's working. Everybody's staying home. There's no parades. It's unconventional at best, man. But I'm doing good. Thanks.
Hey, man, completely insane times. Also, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I know a lot of crazy things going on out there in Baton Rouge, power out and everything like that. So thank you for your time. We really do appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. I woke up this morning and I was heating up the Keurig to make my coffee, and power went out. So, I mean, all over town right now, it's a deep freeze, man. Like we were talking offline, it's just weird because people listen in different parts of the country, I'm sure, who, maybe don't understand. It's just we don't have the infrastructure in Louisiana to deal with snow and ice. We don't have salt trucks, we don't have plows. I mean, nobody knows what to do. Nothing's freeze-proof, basically. So it's kind of the opposite of when, the Upper East Coast, New York, got hit with Superstorm Sandy a few years back. It's like they didn't have the infrastructure to deal with a hurricane. Well, we don't have the infrastructure to deal with snow and ice. So, man, this happens. Everything just shuts down. So, and everybody's just hanging out at home today, just riding this thing out. Yeah,
man. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, growing up in New Orleans, I can count maybe on one hand how many times I've seen snow. And since I left, I think it snowed quite a few times. But just thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. And, we hear you talk about the Saints on After Further Review, contract negotiations, Drew Brees. But want to get your perspective here on the State of the Saints podcast. Let's go ahead and start with Drew Brees. Sean Payton said, I think last week, that Drew Brees is probably going to come out maybe this week or next week with his announcement. So what do you think about Drew Brees, and what are the memories that you're going to have watching Drew Brees as the Saints quarterback?
Oh, man. Look, for a guy who was born in New Orleans and was baptized at the black and gold altar, man, I just, to live your entire life with a franchise that just didn't win. Right. And then to have Drew Brees show up, sort of in that moment. I mean, I know all the different, the parallels have been drawn about, the Saints being reborn, the city being reborn post-Katrina, and Brees' career post-shoulder injury being reborn altogether. I mean, that symbolism is obviously there, but the results on the field are what they are. I mean, as the league's all-time leading passer, as a guy that won a Super Bowl, brought this franchise to heights that none of us thought we'd ever see, and doing so in such a classy manner, who was so great to the community, lived uptown and made himself part of the community as well. I've often said, man, Drew Brees is the most influential sports figure in the history of the state of Louisiana. I mean, I could probably come up with some names, TJ, like, for example, Huey Long, right? Huey Long, when he was governor, he got Tiger Stadium built. He was so influential at LSU. We could talk about Tom Benson, certainly. But without Tom Benson, it's possible the Saints and the Pelicans aren't here. I mean, there may be no professional sports in this state. If Benson didn't step in and buy the team in the 80s, it's entirely possible an outsider could have stepped in, bought the team, and moved him. So, but as far as an athlete, there's nobody as influential as Drew Brees in the history of our state. So, man, we could do an entire podcast just on Drew. We want to talk about memories, man. Shoot, I certainly being in the Dome for the Falcons game post Katrina. You want to talk about that divisional round game against the Eagles that year, getting that win, going up to Chicago, seeing that loss in Soldier Field. Some of the disappointments in 07 and 08, but of course, the 2009 season was so special. I remember the awesome game at home against the Jets. Man, we could do that. We could do the whole podcast on Brees, but I mean, his legacy is intact. I mean, he's the greatest player in the history of the franchise, man. We're blessed to have had him the last 15 years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I can remember some of those times. We talked offline. Like I said, I grew up in New Orleans. I remember watching New Orleans Saints, and you can get their tickets at your local gas station. I mean, it was some embarrassing stuff.
Dude, listen, it's so funny you say that. So we lived, before we moved to Baton Rouge, we lived in New Orleans East in Lake Carmel.
Right.
And I vividly remember this. My dad was bringing us home from school one day, and the Saints were doing a promo where Bobby Hebert was at a gas station, like at a Texaco, signing autographs, man. So, like, me and my brother and my dad pull up, and there's the Cajun Cannon signing these, like, glossy 5x7 pictures, man. I still got it. And it's so funny now because, like, professionally, I know Bobby, and Bobby's son T-Bob works with us at our stations, the morning guys. So it's funny how all that comes full circle, man. When you say gas station, that just sparked my memories. Like, you're done right. You literally could roll up on a gas station and get autographs or tickets.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy though, but they got that old saying, they saw two Saints tickets on the seat, the glass was broken, you seen four. I mean, it was bad times though, man. But you look at Drew Brees and how he legitimized the franchise. Like he is and has been the New Orleans Saints. And no matter what the score was, you always believed you had a chance when number 9 was on the field. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. I mean, there's no way in the world.
That is you're so right too, and that is really the complete antithesis of what the franchise was forever, because the thought was always, okay, how are they going to screw this up? Like, I can remember being in the dome. So both my grandparents, my mom's parents and my dad's parents, had season tickets forever. Mm-hmm. And so we'd always end up sitting with one on one side or the other. But and they were like, my dad's parents sat in the 40 behind the Saints bench. My mom's parents were on the 40 behind the visitor bench. So it depends on kind of who had a ticket, where you get in the dome. Man, I can remember watching a game. This was early in Jerome Bettis' career, man. Early, and he was with the Rams. This was before Bettis went to Pittsburgh. Right. So, I mean, early Jerome Bettis. And Sam Mills made an incredible play, man. And you could check me on the date and all. I don't remember the year, the date, whatever. But Sam Mills hits Bettis in the hole and locks him up and, grabs the ball and spins, rips the ball away from Bettis and houses it. We're like, oh, we roll the pitches on deck. Right? And I'll be damned, the Saints didn't go lose that game to the Rams. And those were the same old sorry ass Rams, and they still find a way to lose. Like, always, that's the biggest turnaround. It just, you're right. You just went into every game expecting that the team was going to win, and you were disappointed when it didn't happen because, if you go in and your expectation is the basement, bro, you're not expecting to win, then you're never surprised when you lose.
Yeah. And man, that's the thing now. I talked about on my last podcast. I said when young, like growing up in the 90s, if the Saints won, you were like, what, they won? Yeah. Now it's like, and if they didn't, you didn't feel as bad. But now it's like they're really, really good. And when they lose, it's like, why? It hurts even worse.
It's cliche to say, well, they changed the culture. But but what you just described there is literally what that means. It's it over the course of almost 2 decades, it changed the mentality of a fan base that had been ingrained for 40 years, which is, how are they going to screw it up? They're going to lose. They suck. I mean, it's now, even with Drew Brees on the way out, we all collectively have this feeling like, hey, man, whoever's next might actually be an upgrade because they push the ball downfield. Like, you look at all the talent on the roster, they could still win. You got Sean Payton. I mean, the fact that you had backup Teddy B went 5-0 last year, and you went 3-1 with Brees out this year. You're like, man, you can win with that. It's the whole mindset around the whole franchise just changed.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, we talk about Drew Brees and you just touched on it. I mean, we got to talk about the future now. I mean, the wheels keep turning, right? I mean, it's the National Football League, and the Saints got some questions they need to answer, especially at the quarterback position. Sean Payton talked about it in an interview, talked about he feels that his next quarterback is in the building. I mean, on one hand, you have Taysom Hill, who's the only quarterback on the payroll right now. Well, I mean, Drew Brees is, and we expect him to retire. And there's also Jameis Winston. And, man, you talked about Jameis Winston on your show. I mean, this guy getting a lot of criticism here. And, I mean, everybody seems to be hung up on this whole 30 for 30, 30 touchdown, 30 interceptions. But, what can Jameis Winston bring to the New Orleans Saints? What type of skill set are we talking about when we talk about Jameis Winston?
Well, the skill set you're talking about is a guy who's talented enough to be the first overall pick in the draft. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a guy still in his physical prime. So I've talked a lot about Jameis for the last year. because whenever it was clear he wasn't going to be back in Tampa, TJ, I don't know if I was the first, man, but I was among the first to say the Saints need to go sign him.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was replicating what they did the year before with Teddy Bridgewater. You get a guy who's proven he can be a starting quarterback in the league, not to be your starter, but to be a competent backup just in case. Mm-hmm. And, oh, by the way, maybe, just maybe, he could be the guy. And you get a test drive, basically, to say, could this be a guy that fits and could be your franchise in the future? Mm-hmm. The thing that I'm so impressed with Jameis is, look, his entire life, like, if you've ever been around dudes that are physically elite, right, and to be the number one overall, but just to be a quarterback in the National Football League, you are just a different level human. It's like, TJ, you and I, no matter how hard we worked, we were never going to be a quarterback in the NFL. Like, you just have to be blessed with some God-given stuff. Right. So if you're Jameis Winston, who is, by the way, good enough to be a collegiate pitcher at Florida State and could have been a professional pitcher if he wanted to, when you're that kind of athlete, often you're never humble, man. Like, you're just always, from the time he was in bitty basketball or Pop Warner or whatever, he's just always been the best.
Right.
So when he has that season in 2019 in Tampa and they cut him, that's the first time in his life that he athletically was humbled.
Right.
And I always think it's interesting to see how someone responds to adversity like that. And look at what Jamarcus Russell didn't handle adversity well. Ryan Leaf didn't handle adversity well. There's a lot of first-round draft picks at quarterback that are out of the league within 5 years because whenever it came to it, they didn't have the drive, the work ethic, the determination to let that match their physical ability to carry them through an NFL career.
Yeah.
Look at what Jameis has done. He went and got LASIK, fixed his eyesight.
Right.
He went vegan, lost 30 pounds, best shape of his life. Took a bargain basement deal at $1 million, just as he put it. I'm going to get my PhD in football. That's what he said when he came to sit under Drew Brees and Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Humbled himself this year, kept his mouth shut. Even when they played Taysom Hill when Drew got hurt, Jameis didn't complain.
Yeah.
Great locker room guy, great leader. Everyone on that team that I've spoken with raves about him. Guys that I know who play on the Bucs raved about him as a leader. Like, you can point to all the silly stuff he did at Florida State, and there was plenty. And the point that I've always made is, look, man, any human, anybody, if you're judged at what you do when you're 18 and 22 years old, we all did stupid things.
Yeah, that's true.
He was on a very public – I'm not excusing any of it. But the reality is also when you become a married man, when you have children, as Jameis is married, kids, now, like, your life and perspective, things change. Like, that stuff forces you to reevaluate everything and prioritize, and it forces you to mature, to grow up. And I think we've seen that evolution for Jameis. Yeah. The on-field stuff that people always say about the turnovers, it's just a fallacy, man. I mean, he threw 30 picks in 2019, but that is the outlier. If you look at his 5 years in Tampa, the most interceptions he had in the season prior was 17. I mean, Peyton Manning as a rookie threw 29. I mean, I did this on my show where I ran through Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Dan Marino. I mean, go through John Elway, Johnny Unitas. Go through like the greatest quarterbacks ever that people say. And they all had these 25, 30 interception seasons. I mean, it happens sometimes. You're on a bad team. You have to force the ball. I'm not excusing that altogether, but man, that's a guy where if with Sean Payton, with Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, the weapons they have, a top 5, top 10 defense in the league, like, could they win at an elite level with him? Yeah, they can. I'm not saying it's a cinch, it's a given, but can they? Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, I just look at Jameis. One thing that stood out to me was the 2019 season, Week 17, his final press conference in a Tampa Bay uniform. And he said, I got all the tools to be the best quarterback in the National Football League. And he said, all I got to do is just cut down the interceptions. And, normally guys will say that, it's just lip service, But you can really, look in his eyes and tell, he really felt that way. And I also think that people need to understand, too, Matt, I mean, he went to the Buccaneers. Like, he was the number 1 overall pick to the Buccaneers for a reason. They wasn't very good. Statistically, if you look at the numbers, they didn't do much to help him. I mean, questionable offensive line, questionable running back play. And coach after coach after coach, philosophy after philosophy. Now he can come to an organization where, I mean, they're pretty stable, and they're not just – they're looking for him to win them some games, yes. But unlike in Tampa, like the Saints can win in other ways too. They ain't got to throw the ball all over the place. And Sean Payton is not going to ask him to do something that he's not comfortable with. I think Bruce Arians, he's done that everywhere he went. That's the reason why every quarterback that was under his tutelage always ended up having a high rate of interceptions. Sean Payton goes into a classrooms and talks to these guys and say, hey, what plays are you comfortable with? And he puts that into a scheme, and then he slowly starts to add to that person's arsenal. So I just think that it would be a great place for him, and I just feel like now you don't have that whole cloud of being a savior of a franchise under you,
It's true.
That's tough. That's tough for a kid.
It's also interesting, TJ, that the Saints would be getting Jameis right around the same point in his career that they got Drew Brees.
Right.
Now, Drew Brees was in his mid-20s when they signed him from San Diego. That was in an era where most guys stayed in school 4 years. But,
right.
It's one of those things where you're kind of getting them around the same point that you did Brees. And remember, Brees was a castaway. The Chargers decided they were going with Phillip Rivers.
Good point.
And Brees had the shoulder injury, which obviously exacerbated their decision. Right. But they had already made the decision in drafting Phillip Rivers that they were moving on from Drew Brees. So, I think Sean Payton probably sees a lot of those similarities. The other thing I would say is, who else is a better option? I mean, realistically, look around and go, okay, well, there's some older veteran quarterbacks that are probably going to be available, like Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, that doesn't seem appealing to me.
No, it doesn't.
Matt Stafford's already off the market, and the Saints didn't even make a play for him. Yeah. You could go to some young veterans. I mean, you could look at maybe trying to work a deal with the Jets for Sam Darnold, but do you feel better with Darnold than you do with Jameis? The Saints are picking 28th. You could look at drafting a quarterback, but realistically, the way that it seems, if you believe the draft experts and pundits, how this is all going to go, is that the top 4 guys are going to come off the board probably within the top 10 picks. Right. So that means you'd probably have to move up somewhere in the low teens to draft a guy like Mac Jones. Yeah. Well, are you convinced that Mac Jones is the guy? You want to put him in as a rookie and build around Mac Jones and have to give up assets to move up in the draft to get him? I don't know that that's a better option. Yeah. So, then a guy that is a former number 1 overall pick, is more mature in his NFL career, started 70 games, who has a 5,000-yard passing season, who knows your personnel, who knows your division. You know him because he's been on your roster. Yeah. I don't know that there's a better option. I think the Saints would be well served to sign Jameis to a deal similar to what Teddy Bridgewater got in Carolina, maybe one that's incentive laden, and see what you got here. Yeah. And if you crash and burn, then you reassess and maybe you go somewhere in the draft looking for your next franchise quarterback. But I just don't know that there's another great option available to New Orleans right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point. And let me ask you this about Sean Payton and Jameis. Do you feel like Sean Payton hid Jameis out? Because, I mean, you look at last year, I really feel like he wanted to keep Teddy Bridgewater. He wasn't counting on Drew Brees to get hurt. Drew Brees, for the first time in years, ended up missing multiple games. And then Teddy Bridgewater comes in, win 5 straight, and next thing you know, he's on his way to Charlotte. So do you think that Sean Payton hid out Jameis Winston because he didn't want to repeat what happened with Teddy Bridgewater?
No. And I understand the logic, but I think sometimes the hardest thing for us to realize or understand or acknowledge, we may be looking at the 10,000-foot view like that.
Right.
But Sean Payton's going, I got to win this game this week. He's not thinking, well, if I play Jameis and he does well, am I going to lose him? Like, he's thinking, I got to go beat Chicago. You know what I mean? I got to go beat Denver. I mean, we're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
We're trying to get the number 1 seed. He's not sitting there thinking about what might happen if we win this game and he plays well. Like, that just doesn't enter the thought process. And again, like, I know this is hard because it's a very rational thought that fans and pundits we all talk about, but you got to put yourself in the mindset of where Sean Payton is on the Monday of a game week, and doesn't have a starting quarterback. It's, how do I win Sunday?
Yeah.
And everything else happens whenever it does. I believe him when he says he talked to Taysom and told Taysom that he'd give him the first crack at being a starting quarterback. And I think Sean Payton in his heart of hearts believed Taysom Hill could be a starter in the NFL and wanted to see if that could play out. And it's pretty clear he ain't going to be a starter in the NFL. So, I mean, look, we all knew that. But here's the thing with Sean. Sean is, in his mind, the smartest guy in the room. And in many instances, he is. But I want to be clear about something. That's not a criticism. Because, man, one thing I've learned covering coaches and athletes all these years, man, you get to spend time with them. But there's a reason they reach the level they do. They're different than you and me. They're wired differently. They're driven by ego. They think they're the smartest people in the room because a lot of times they are the smartest people in the room. They work harder. They're tireless. Like, it's just different, man. Right. I mean, so I don't doubt at all that Sean Payton really believed that he could make Taysom Hill a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think it's pretty clear after seeing that experiment, he ain't gonna make Taysom Hill a starting quarterback in the NFL. So they got to get a better option. It's not gonna be Taysom Hill.
Yeah. Let's put your GM hat on just for a second. All right. You have a choice. You have Marcus Williams and you have Trey Hendrickson. Both are going to leave. Which one are you going to keep? Which one you're going to let go?
So my good friend Mike Detillier, who comes on my radio show every week, has always said, if you have the chance between a skilled big man or a skilled small man, you take the skilled big man because there just ain't many of them. Right? I mean, it's much harder to find a large man with the skill that Trey Hendrickson has. Now, specifically with the Saints, I don't think they're going to be able to afford Trey Hendrickson. Pass rushers are at such a premium, and Hendrickson finishing tied for second in the league in sacks, somebody's going to overpay him. I'd love to see him stay in New Orleans, but somebody's going to overpay him. And if you're the Saints, you got Cam Jordan under contract. Obviously, you have Marcus Davenport with his 4th and 5th year option. You really like Carl Granderson as well. I mean, Carl Granderson has shown flashes that he could be a serviceable rotational player coming off the edge. What they really liked about him coming out of Wyoming. So, if I had to guess which one they're going to keep, I think they're going to pay Marcus Williams. And as much as we focus on some of the mistakes Marcus has made, of course, going back to the Minneapolis Miracle and some of the others, when you look at Marcus Williams statistically, he ranks right up there with the top paid safeties in the NFL.
Right.
It's strange to say it and think it, but everything from, if you want to look at Pro Football Focus grades, if you want to look at tackles or interceptions or pass deflection, anything, go look at all of it. I mean, he is right there with the top safeties in the NFL. So I think they're going to pay Marcus. I think Trey Hendrickson is going to get a giant contract elsewhere, and
Hello? Sorry about that. I think we lost Matt for a second. We're speaking with Matt Moscona, 104.5 ESPN. He was talking a little bit about Marcus Williams. Possibly would he keep Marcus Williams or go with Trey Hendrickson? He's lost a little bit of reception there. Like I said, a little bit of bad weather out there in Baton Rouge. Hello? Are you there?
There we are.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened, man. We just went into an icy internet black hole.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It froze up. I know the last thing I heard you say was about Marcus Williams Pro Football Focus grade.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man. I think, no matter what metric you look at, right? If it's his Pro Football Focus grade, if it's sacks or tackles for loss or passes deflected, he's right there with the top safeties in the NFL. So I think the Saints are going to pay Marcus Williams. I'd rather keep Trey Hendrickson because I'd rather keep the skilled big man. But I think Trey Hendrickson is going to end up leaving in free agency, and I think the Saints will end up re-signing Marcus Williams.
All right. Final question for you, Matt. First round pick for the New Orleans Saints. What direction do they need to go in?
Cornerback. I think Janoris Jenkins is going to be a cap casualty, and they're going to have to replace him opposite Marshawn Lattimore. I don't know if there's an affordable option in veteran free agency. If Janoris wants to come back at a lesser price, awesome. I'd be down with that.
Right.
But I don't know what the market's going to be for him. And realistically, he slipped a little. But I think that would be my number one target if they stay pat at 28, is give me the best corner on the board. I would also be thrilled if they went receiver because, the Saints have really transformed their offense to be a short intermediate passing game with Mike Thomas and with Kamara around the line of scrimmage because Breeze hasn't been able to push the ball downfield. People say, well, they don't push the ball downfield. Well, a big part of that is, TJ, when's the last time they had a receiver that could blow the top off? I mean, they really haven't replaced it. I mean, they haven't had a Derrick Henry since they traded Brandon Cooks. I mean, you had Ted Ginn, but Ginn wasn't even really what Ginn was early in his career. So you haven't had that stretch the field guy. Maybe they kind of hoped that Traquan Smith could be that, but he hasn't really materialized. Right. So, man, if there's a burner sitting there at 28 and you want to get that guy that can go, I mean, I think Kadarius Toney would have been that guy, but he went to the Senior Bowl and blew up. I don't think there's any way he's on the board at 28. But if he is, I'd be down with that. I think there's a lot of options they could go. Look, man, it could come to a situation where Teron Armstead, is gone for a cap-saving move. Maybe you're looking offensive tackle. Could Ryan Ramczyk swing over and play left, and you bring in a new right tackle, or does Ramczyk stay put it right? And you draft a rookie left tackle. I think there's a lot of direction. What happens with Sheldon Rankins? Are you looking for interior defensive lineup? What happens with Marcus Williams? Are you looking for a safety? There's this roster, depending on what happens with respect to the cap and who's available, is going to dictate largely what they do at 28. But they're not lacking for needs. As much talent is on this team, they're at a point where I think we all realize you can't pay everybody. And so there's going to be roster turnover. So wherever that turnover comes is probably what they address in round one.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, hopefully it can help them move forward. I want them to get a linebacker. I think it's time. Yeah. Man, I mean, look, they're the only team I've seen in the South that hasn't drafted a stud linebacker. I mean, you look at Luke Kuechly when he played for Carolina, him and Thomas Davis. You look at what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got in Devin White and Levante David, even Debo Jones, out there in Atlanta. So I think it's time for the Saints to try to pick up a linebacker in the draft. But Matt, thank you so much for your time, man. I really do appreciate it. Before you go, let everybody know how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, man, I'm on basically every social media platform. So if you can spell my name, you can find me. It's Moscona, Matt Moscona. And you can always listen at 1045ESPN.com or watch us on the 1045 ESPN YouTube channel every week afternoon from 3 to 6. So appreciate everybody who finds a way to find us on one of those platforms.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. We're looking forward to hearing from you. I always enjoy your commentary, man. we just enjoy you. I mean, you're so animated, man. And man, I enjoy it, man. I enjoy your YouTube channel and also your show After Further Review. So look forward to hearing from you in the future, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, DJ.
All right, take care.